Now we've got a great guest for you guys, Barbara Birk. We've had her on the show before. She's the author of Sexism in America, Alive, Well, and Ruining Our Future. And she's written about the Stupak Amendment, and that's what brings her here today. Barbara, welcome back to the Young Turks.
Thanks. Good to be back.
We appreciate your time. So,
Thank you.
The Stupak Amendment, I'm gathering that you're not a big fan of it. Let me start with a somewhat standard question. If it is in the final version of health care, would you vote against all of health care if it has a Stupak Amendment in it?
Oh, boy. This is a very, very tough question, actually one that I've been giving a great deal of thought to. Rather than answer it that way, I am going to say that I hope and believe very strongly that it's not going to be in the final version of the health care reform bill, that we are getting numerous people in the Senate, Barbara Boxer, Diane DeGette, who are absolutely certain that this is not going to last in the Senate. I think that we have to understand how damaging this amendment will be. It will really put abortion, which I think we all have to be reminded, and probably not our listeners tonight, but the President of the United States as well as the rest of the country and the men who are in charge of trying to limit abortion, that abortion is still legal in this country. And this is going to prevent women from receiving tax subsidies, from using their own money to purchase private insurance that covers abortion.
Well, Barbara, let me challenge you on that a little bit, because, you know, the Republicans, or the pro-lifers, because there's Republicans and Democrats here that have joined forces, are saying, well, look, if I give you a subsidy and then you take your own money and buy private insurance that provides abortion.
Right.
Well, I mean, you're really taking from one pocket and putting into another pocket, and that's why it's really federal money that's going towards providing that abortion coverage. Isn't that a fair point?
I don't see it that way. I honestly don't. I think if it's their own money, if they're receiving tax subsidies to purchase, and let's remember this is a private insurance plan, if they're then using their own money to do that, I don't see it that way. I don't see that it's federal money that's actually going for to provide abortion, rather. And you know, we've had the Hyde Amendment on the books for 30 years. No one wants to tamper with that. Everyone seemed to think until the very last minute, until Stupak and Pitt's amendment came in, that the new plan was going to be abortion neutral, meaning not advance people who wanted choice and not set us back. But this has certainly set women back. And
Barbara, I guess my bigger concern is that even if you're not getting a federal subsidy, if you're going to the exchange, and you're not getting a subsidy at all, but you're going to the exchange to get private insurance, that you're not going to be able to get abortion coverage in that, because all of the policies that go into that exchange have to say that they don't provide abortion coverage. Otherwise, none of the people who do get subsidies can sign on to them. So does that, through that process, does it affect almost everybody who would be getting coverage through the exchange?
Yes, that's what's so troubling about it, is that we're not going to be able to have private insurance companies that will be offering abortion coverage at all. And the notion that women can purchase separately a rider absolutely doesn't make sense, because
Why?
no woman starts out in life or being sexually active assuming that she's going to have an abortion or planning for abortion. You know, I think that it's important to know that so many women have abortions because the pregnancy is in trouble, because the baby has died in utero, because they've been leaving the guy, or the guy is going to beat them if they have one more child, or he's going to leave them. And, you know, I think it's also important to know that 61% of American women obtaining an abortion have at least one child already. And I'm sure that for these women, it's a heartbreaking decision to have this abortion, but they're doing it because, you know, they probably just can't afford to go ahead with another child. So I think the notion of putting abortion beyond the reach of most women in this country, and thinking that they're going to purchase a supplemental policy, it's it makes no sense at all. It's like saying, well, yeah, I'm going to get a policy because one day I might trip and break my leg, and then I'm going to need coverage for that. It's really the same thing. No one I know, of all the women I know who have had abortions, planned for them. They were caught, they were stuck, they were desperate. It was something that they did with a great deal of thought and a great deal of unhappiness, but always ultimately relief once it was over.
We're talking to Barbara Birk. She's the author of Sexism in America, Alive, Well, and Ruining Our Future. She's also written about the Stupak Amendment that we're talking about here in her blog, theragblog.blogspot.com. So, Barbara, let me go to the next issue, which is, well, we don't have the numbers. I'm pro-choice, but apparently most congressmen are pro-life. What do we do about that? I mean, if the majority is going to win in this case, as it's not the majority of Americans necessarily, but the majority of the House, they win. I mean, don't we have to fix that through elections and not through necessarily this bill?
Well, look, I think, the most recent poll that I read indicates that 80% of Americans think abortion should be legal in some circumstances. 31% think it should always be legal. 10% think it should never be legal. I think what we're seeing here is really, and this is what almost frightens me, I won't say frightens me more than the possibility of a world without abortion, because if you've looked at the blog, you see that it begins with a doctor's memories of what it was like in the bad old days, when abortion was not legal, and the patients that he saw who had resorted to the most desperate measures to abort themselves and who died in the process, young girls. I can barely read that, honestly, without becoming teary about this. But what scares me almost as much as that prospect is the fact that we have allowed the religious right in this country once again to really call the shots. And I think that many of us were rejoicing once Bush and company left center stage that we would see the end, or at least a limit, to the amount of control and influence the religious right had. And the U.S. Conference, the Conference of U.S. Bishops, really played a huge hand in this. And I see the Democratic Party really kowtowing, and it's very, very troubling.
But you know what part of the problem is, Barbara, whether it's the Democratic Party or progressive activists or whatever, part of the reason that actually support for choice is slipping in the polls is because nobody ever fights for choice. I mean, the pro-life guys have been fighting and making their case and pleading their case and pressuring the congressmen and taking their fight to the American people as well. And honestly, on the pro-choice side, nary a peep.
Well, I think for many people who are pro-choice, we saw with a bit of worry that the Democratic Party, which had always been very, very committed to choice, distancing itself from choice. In the 2004 elections, there was a notion that we could get a majority, and that seemed to be all that anybody cared about, was to get a majority in Congress, and many of the Democrats who were elected then were actually anti-choice, and the party has distanced itself from abortion rights movements in other ways. It's taking to calling Democrats who oppose a woman's right to choose pro-life, not anti-choice. And I think that...
Yeah, but I think that's just word games. I mean,
well,
I know,
it's words,
but
it's language.
No, I don't need that from
matters.
them, but I need them to actually fight. And look, because the reality is you're going to lose all these votes in the House because they're just simply more pro-life guys than pro-choice guys.
Well,
and if you don't like that, you got to go and make sure they get defeated.
Well, I agree with you. And, as I'm speaking, as you know, about my book and about these issues, I think that women have to, and it's not just women, it's men as well, progressive men who are pro-choice. We have to rally and make ourselves heard, and we can't assume that those who are elected are going to take care of us on this issue. We have to really fight for this, because when I used to teach at colleges, and I've given that up for a while to work on the book, I used to tell my classes, we are in danger of losing choice, and they would look at me like, oh my God, where's this person from? She's out of touch with reality. And yet I think the de facto result of the Stupak-Pitts Amendment may be that for the majority of women in this country, choice is going to be hard. Look, we have
Barbara,
so many...
I'll tell you this, reading your blog, that the old stories of how it used to be when abortion was illegal and women were getting it anyway, right? Which of course happens, right?
Well, wealthier women will get it anyway.
Right. It's so scary. I think we've totally forgotten what illegal abortions are
I'm
actually
so
like.
glad that you mentioned that because, when you start writing something, you can write a blog any way you want to in terms of what you emphasize. And I thought, no, I need to write something graphic and something real so that people will remember what it's like for these women. And, of course, people will get abortions, but people will also try to abort themselves. I mean, it was illegal, it was dangerous, and it still continued. Something like in 1960s, 1 million women are estimated to have had illegal abortions, and by one count, 7,000 women died from botched abortions in 1966, compared with 3,000 American deaths that year in Vietnam. That's an awful lot of people dying, both ways, in the war and the women.
Right. And the numbers people argue about, but
yes, I mean, you can't verify.
It doesn't matter how many people did. I mean, all those stories were horrific, and people are obviously going to have abortions anyway. It happens all throughout the world, and if you don't provide a safe way of doing it, it's a disastrous route. But if you want to fight, if you don't want that to happen, you got to fight. Otherwise, these guys are going to win. The blog is called theragblog.blogspot.com. The book is Sexism in America. Barbara Birk, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for giving me the chance to talk about this important issue. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care.